Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Titans as well as the latest episode of Van Helsing. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of Titans, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Van Helsing. But the first thing I'll talk about is this week's episode of Titans. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, picking up with the fact is that Jason has been kidnapped by Deathstroke and Dr. Light. That I love that, even under these circumstances, Jason is still going to be Jason, and he's talking mad shit, and then he's telling Dr. Light, it's like, well, I could do this all day, all night, and if you're nice, or I think he said either you're nice or you're good, I can do it twice on Sunday. Almost got away, but obviously Deathstroke was there waiting, so. And it was really interesting, that line that Deathstroke had said to Jason, being like, the fact of the matter is, that's what they do. They convince, like, talking about specifically Robin, more specifically, Dick, about how, he convinces young people about this whole playing superhero thing, giving costumes to kids, which, to be fair, that wasn't even, I think Deathstroke's assuming, it's like, well, to be fair, Jason getting the cloak and getting the outfit and everything, that was more so on Bruce rather than Jason, but I mean, more rather than on, Dick. So, but I think for him, he's so mad at Dick, it doesn't even probably cross his mind. Like I said, that's what makes me wonder, is he even aware? He's aware of Batman, but I wonder, has he even crossed paths with Batman in this continuity? That's what, like I said, I'm curious about it, because it seems like he's a Titans villain, not a Batman villain, but regardless. In this particular case, I mean, it was just interesting hearing that. So it made me go, okay, so at one point they had to have Jericho be in a get up like a superhero suit. So like I said, the question either becomes Deathstroke killed him by accident because obviously didn't realize it was him, or, he had, or maybe he was coming after the Titans, but, it's like, yeah, they were using Jericho at first, but then maybe he did become like an ally. So maybe that line got a little blurred. And then, when he came after the Titans to finish him for whatever contract he has, the fact is Jericho was in the way because it's like, oh, I'm a hero, I'm going to protect my friends, my team, and lo and behold. Or maybe it was like a last betrayal at the second where it's like, we got your son, do what we want, and then maybe Jericho felt betrayed. I don't know. There's so much of that story we still don't know. But that's obviously the big driving force behind all this. What I thought was interesting, because obviously, everyone's looking for Jason, and you have, Dr. Light being pissed because it's like, you said that we would kill the Titans and stuff like that. But for him, he's getting agitated. It's like, we need to do this now. Like, the plans, all this time we spent planning kind of going down the drain. So let's do this. He's like, forget it. I'm going to do it myself. He gets all juiced up and he's listening to music in the truck. He's getting ready. He's like, yeah, pop. He's dead. I'm like, jeez. I was kind of halfway expecting, the moment he was kind of talking shit, I was like, Deathstroke's going to kill him. I was like, I'm actually kind of surprised he didn't. But it's like, oh, no, never mind. It's the question, I guess, because Dr. Light kind of served the purpose. The whole point was for him to draw the Titans, all of them, back to San Francisco. So it's like, now that that's done, he doesn't have any role to play, because also I'm sure for Deathstroke, it's like, for Slade, it's like, you're an annoyance. It's like, you played your role, you're now getting a little too big for your britches, and it's like, you're trying to tell me what to do. The fact of the matter is, you're too much of a firecracker, or this operation takes finesse a little, you need a scalpel, whereas Dr. Light was a full-blown hacksaw. But it's just still interesting to know, it's like, oh wow, you just straight up killed him. So that's interesting. But this is just on that side of things. Obviously, back at, Titan's Tower, things are complicated on many fronts. It's interesting because it seems like Gar actually went to Rachel first before he did anyone else. And then, there's that swirling black cloud, as, Gar kind of describes it, which is like, man, and he reaches in and it kind of cuts his hand. And then, the news kind of drops. Obviously, everyone finds out about what happened to Jason. And obviously, Dick is pissed because it's like, why did you two decide to do that? Obviously, it was just because I think just as much as Jason wanted to prove himself, I think on some level, Gar wanted to prove himself too, as being like, we're not just kids. We're here, so, let us do something. So I think maybe on some level, Gar kind of felt that too. And now he's feeling guilty because it's like, because of me, because I didn't listen to myself and my better judgment, I went off with Jason, and now this is happening. He could potentially be dead, and it's on me. Obviously, even Hank being like, yeah, it's kind of on that kid for being an asshole in the first place. He found himself in this situation. That's kind of on him. But yeah, they quickly learn that it isn't just Dr. Light behind it. Obviously, when they find his body, it's like, yep, Deathstroke's behind all of this. And there's just so much going on at once, because it's like, like I said, Gar's pacing around and he's pissed. Rose isn't making it any better. It's like, yeah, she's like, don't throw your guilt on me. You want to be pissed at me about me saying stuff like that. It's like, the fact of the matter is, this is on you, so don't blame me. And obviously he's kind of being a little pissed, and he's taking it out on Rachel, because Rachel was like, yeah, the fact is, it's not Rose's fault. And it's like, and Gar's like, well, you saying it's mine? She's like, I didn't say that. But the thing is, if like, what were you thinking was the whole point? And he, for him, it's just like they're snapping back and forth at each other, because he's like, oh, you're talking about me keeping secret. Because for more so than anything, she's like, I get it, you don't want to tell Dick, that's fine, but you could have told me. Maybe we could have made a difference. I could have helped and crushed, because at the time they thought it was Dr. Light. But it's like, he's like, really? You going to talk about all that, when the fact of the matter is, you're hiding this whole aspect of your powers and stuff like that. They're hurting you and everything, those scars on your body. And he's like, and she's like, oh, so you're spying. It's like, I saw him doing training. The fact of the matter is, it's not like you're telling Dick everything either. So, it's like, what help could you have been when you can't even control your own powers, which is true. So it's just, and it's so sad, because they've always kind of been on the same page, and this is an instance of them kind of fun. I mean, to be fair, it's just, they're both scared in their own right. She's scared of her abilities, and he's scared in the situation of like, I screwed up and I might have helped get Jason killed. So it's just guilt and all that kind of riddling each one of them, I mean, when they're also kids too, so it's just, you don't know how to properly, handle a situation like this. I mean, these are the circumstances no normal teenager would find themselves in. So, and then, Rachel's kind of like, oh, look at that, perfect timing. Corey shows up just in time. So now it's the whole aspect of like, okay, so everyone's here, but now the whole conversation comes down to like, well, it's supposed to be conversation just between the adults, Corey and, the OG Titans are talking, and Rose kind of convinces Gar as well as Rachel that like, oh, we should listen in on this conversation, just because it's like, aren't you tired of being kept in the dark? And so the whole debate, it's like, obviously, Deathstroke wants his daughter back. So the whole thing is like, okay, so give me my daughter back and I'll potentially give you Jason back. And the crazy thing is, you had, out of anyone, Hank being like, we got to make the trade. It's like, I don't like the kid. He can be a bit of an asshole, but come on, he's an innocent kid in this. At the very least, Rose is his kid, which Dawn is like, but it doesn't matter. We've seen what he does. Like, Deathstroke is her dad, or whether or not, that actually makes it worse, because he is her dad, that, we literally can't leave her in his hands, which you even have, Donna being like, maybe she'd just be better off of us just letting her go to do whatever she wants. She'd be better off on her own than going back to her dad. But then, you have Dick being like, we can't do that either, because if we let her go and Deathstroke finds out, we lose our leverage, so he'd have no reason to keep Jason alive. And, Corey's kind of the one, because each one of them is kind of pulling in their own different directions, where Corey is kind of the one that's kind of trying to be the voice of reason, just being like, you can't do this. The fact of the matter is, if you end up becoming the monsters defeating if you become a monster just to fight Deathstroke, then, and that's even something Dawn repeats later on, is like, once it happens, like, there won't be anything good of us left when this is all said and done. So, and I always like that as being a conversation with superheroes of like, how far are you willing to go, to take down a bad guy? Because if, because they're already living with the fact is of whatever it is that went down exactly between Deathstroke and them and the whole Jericho thing, they're still feeling that guilt from all those years ago. Because they even said it, we're not going to use another kid as bait for Deathstroke. Even if these are his kids, it's still not good that we do this. You can make the argument that's probably another reason why they were like, no, get Deathstroke's kid out of here, because it's like, we're not about to go down this lane again. So that might have been the reason why they were kind of, so I mean, also because it's like, well, if his kid's here and he's after his kid, that's going to draw back to us. I mean, they even made the point of like, you better hope if Deathstroke comes knocking, it's not one of the kids and then answers the door, and turns out it was Jason who ended up answering the door in that regard. But nevertheless, and then Rose tries to get away, which I love Hank trying to stop her, and he's like, come on, kid, I don't want to hurt you. She's like, yeah, right. And she hits him, he's like, ow, that fucking hurt. So he tries to defend himself, but Dawn's like, what the hell are you doing, Hank? Because he's literally choking her out. But she manages to slip away and runs into, unfortunately, Rachel. And Rachel was defending herself a little bit against Rose because Rose is like, you're like the one who's been the nicest to me, so I don't want to hurt you, so get out of my way. And then Rachel ends up unleashing her powers, her like the black cloud inside of her comes out and it takes on the form of wings, and she looks super demonic and it looks kind of badass, and she easily overpowers Rose and then literally slams her to the point she breaks her arm, her neck, her legs. And everyone's like, oh, she's dead. I'm like, oh, do y'all not know? Because that makes sense, because they were like, oh, I thought Deathstroke was dead. It's like, they must not know Deathstroke has a crazy ass healing factor that obviously she shares as well, but maybe they don't know the extent. I mean, the fact that she came back from a snapped neck, broken limbs and all that kind of shows like, yeah. I mean, obviously it's probably not as powerful because she still had to be hooked up. Like, they still had to like take her to like that medical center to like, recover. So yeah, she snaps back into place, but it still probably takes its toll. So it takes a little while. She's not like, once again, it's not like a Deadpool thing, because I know like Deathstroke's like, thanks to Death Battle, we know that Deadpool's, healing factor. I mean, he has like a stupid, crazy, powerful healing factor, but Deathstroke's isn't necessarily on that same level. And maybe it is, and maybe just Rose only got a portion of that, so hers is not it's potent, but it's not nearly as powerful as Deathstroke's. Maybe that's the whole situation they're going with, but nevertheless, because Rachel, because she had that whole conversation with Corey, which I thought was kind of interesting, because for her, it's like, at first, Rachel was worried that maybe this was all Trigon, that maybe he's still around, which I'm still kind of like, is he actually dead? Because I thought you just sent him through the portal again, but I was like, no, she might have straight up had killed her dad. So if that's either way, but the fact of the matter is, ever since he tore out her heart, it's like, she just feels like she's something else, becoming something else. And I think you can make that argument because like maybe her heart right there being like that symbolism, being like he took away that human side of her, and all that's kind of raging now on the inside. There's no human side to really fully hold it back, and it's more so her demonic side kind of taking over and everything. It's actually kind of interesting because Corey has her conversation with her. It's like basically on Tamaran, like the bracelets they wear is actually what keeps their power in check until they're old enough to be in control. It could helps them control their Starfire until it keeps it buried until they're ready to control it. But then she brings up the fact is her situation is different because nothing could ever hold her powers back. So it's the same thing, like they're kind of that same thing, because she's telling Rachel like, maybe you need to stop holding your powers back, because the more you hold them back, the more they push back to get out. So, but that was just an interesting conversation. I didn't know. I wonder, is that something specific to the show, or is that true to Starfire and just Tamaranians in general? Because if so, that's such an interesting little detail. Because I was wondering why maybe it depends. Maybe it's not all Tamaranians, because maybe that's something only like the royal family has, like the whole Starfire thing that might only be for them. Regardless, I just thought that was kind of an interesting, because like the home dude, the royal guard dude, like he didn't show any powers like that. So I mean, his eyes glow green, but I mean, to be fair, maybe he just, because he didn't display any of the same powers, so maybe their situation is a little different. Maybe Royals kind of play in a different ballpark. I don't know, whatever the case may be. Which is also interesting because that info gets dropped to Donna, being like, whoa, your royalty? It's like, yeah, I'm kind of next in line. But the fact of the matter is, she didn't want to go home. She actually enjoys it here, which even Donna's like, yeah, I'd give anything to be anywhere but here, because it's interesting, because the whole conversation comes up again, like what went down between you guys and Deathstroke. And it's not just Dick, everyone's avoiding the topic, because in honesty, they're all shameful of what went down. And that's even something Dawn confronted, her talk with with Hank was kind of interesting, where he admitted, it's like, hey, yeah, the kid might be an asshole and I might want to punch him in the face, but I don't want him to die. I do care, That was just me kind of getting flustered about the whole situation, because for him, it's like, he wants to do more, and so Dawn ends up confronting Dick. It's like, I don't know why you restarted this place, whether it was you trying to help bury the past, whether it was just for selfish reasons, but bringing these kids in and not letting them know. The fact is, you didn't tell them at first, whether it was just because you were too ashamed or whatever. Fact of the matter is, you needed to tell them, and after we're done with this, you need to shut this Titans thing down, because, there's too many ghosts here, and the fact of the matter is, even if you don't, I will burn this place down to the ground. Which, is a tough thing for Dick because, for him and he, him and Corey end up having this conversation. He, after everything that went down after losing Garth and everything, that nearly broke the Titans. And so for him, he brought this all because he never asked for help from anyone, because it's like, because he's asking Corey to stick around now. And she's like, but why didn't you ask for help before? Because for him, it's like, because he's grown up kind of not asking for help, because it's like, it's been a whole thing of like working with Batman. Bruce is kind of, and I think that's always kind of, I don't know. It's hard to say because I can't say across all continuities how he gels with the Justice League, because he's usually kind of used to handling things his own way, but now it's like more of a democracy and how things potentially get handled. So, and maybe, Dick kind of got used to that whole thing of just like Bruce handling things his way and not really asking for help. It's kind of like you're kind of out there on your own. I mean, and to be fair, even getting older and just, with the whole Robin situation, he still never asked, I'm sure asked Bruce for help because he's so used to handling things on his own. And I think maybe I'm putting this all on Bruce, but it probably goes back even further. Like ever since he lost his parents, he's probably had a hard time asking people really for help because, it's just kind of just things play out the way they did. And he found himself where he is now. So it's not the easiest thing, So he didn't ask them for help because he knows how painful this was, so he didn't want to bring Donna, Dawn, and Hank back into this, especially like, knowing what this all meant to them, especially what it meant to Donna. As we learned last episode, what it means, obviously all that Hank and Dawn have kind of been through, the whole Hank situation of like, not trying to drag him back as well. So it turns into this thing of like, I don't know. Maybe he was trying to make up for the past, trying to not forget what he did, but at least make up for it, create a new generation of heroes that kind of, I mean, in all honesty, give Gar and Rachel a place, and even Jason another place to call home where they can become a better version of themselves, something that maybe Dick is still looking for, trying to become a better version of himself, trying to still in the process of figuring himself out. So, but when the time comes, they're ready to make the dealings, but they're going to take down Deathstroke together. Except that's not true because Dick ends up going off by himself. And is willing to give himself over because he's like, I know what this is all about. I'll give myself over in exchange so you can leave Jason and Rose out of this because this isn't even about them. This is about Jericho and this is about me. If you're pissed at anyone, it's more so me. So go ahead and take your pound of flesh. All he brought was a bulletproof vest and he takes that off to be like, I'm here, I'm yours, which Deathstroke kind of calls him a con man. The fact of the matter is here you are trying to sacrifice yourself like some martyr, always trying to play the hero. But the fact of the matter is, what was it that he said exactly? Basically, he was saying something on the lines that because Dick is so thinking, because he's such a con man, he still believes that, always trying to find an angle. So basically saying that when it comes to this, I'm the one dictating terms here, not you. And he's going to blow up the bombs to the scaffolding that's holding up, not scaffolding, the lift that's holding up Jason. But luckily Starfire shows up, because Corey's like, you really think, because she knows Dick well enough. It's kind of interesting. And I think that speaks volumes that no one else realized it except for Corey. I think that speaks volumes in itself. But she ended up showing up because she's like, yeah, you compliment my hair, which I didn't even think about that till now. Well, I mean, I think I noticed it, but, it shows how unobservant I am. I was like, right. Because obviously in season 1, she had curly hair. Now her hair is straightened out. Well, because, Starfire's hair is typically straight, I think. It might have some curl, but I feel like, you base it on a Teen Titan cartoon, her hair is typically straight. So, regardless, it was just kind of an interesting thing of like, oh, it's kind of, and the fact is he would make note of it, but for her, it's like, your last thing you're going to say to me is talk about my hair rather than actually giving me a proper goodbye. So the two of them work together to fight Deathstroke. It's actually pretty dope. Dick, all he has to do, like, he blocks himself with the bulletproof vest. She's burning, like, the bullets as they're coming towards them, and they're, working in conjunction pretty damn well. but it isn't enough to take down Deathstroke. And so I did like the moment where obviously, reminiscent of him and his staff, like obviously like he picks up a rod to fight Deathstroke, but they still end up getting their asses handed to him, and he blows up the thing holding up Jason, and Jason's falling to his death. I was actually expecting it a little more brutal. The fact is that he was going to straight up blow up Jason, but it's like, no, I'm going to make it a lot more painful, and don't want it to be fast. I want it to, suffer. I want you to see him fall and not be able to do anything. Dick gets there in time and grabs onto him, but he slips through Dick's grip and he starts falling to his death. I was halfway expecting it, and maybe this will be something they do next episode. I was halfway expecting Corey at this moment to start flying, just because that's one of her powers. But I was actually halfway expecting them to actually do that in this actual episode, but they ended off on the whole thing of like, whoa, Jason's tumbling to his death. The thing is, maybe we'll pick up next episode and he will fall to his death. Maybe someone will come in last second. If anyone would, I would halfway expect it to be, because they kept cutting back to Corey, so I expect her to kind of, push herself. Maybe she remembers that like she can fly, or maybe it's something she's never accomplished before, but I don't know what to expect. It almost seems like Jason might die. I mean, because who knows? Maybe they make it so Corey can't fly in this continuity, but I would assume she can. Maybe she just hasn't learned how to. Either way, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this goes. I am curious, to see what the next episode has in store, where the story takes us now, because Deathstroke's not dealt with. He's still going to be coming after them regardless of how this whole Jason situation plays out. And I halfway expect when it's all said and done, we might have Dick finally telling everyone the truth about what went down. I think Dick is still in the dark about everything that went down with Rachel. I mean, he knows he saw Rachel hurt Rose, but obviously, other than that, he doesn't know the real intricate details. So she's going to probably end up telling him that. Like, there's so much that's going on that obviously Dick's not telling them and they're not telling him. So and that's the problem. There's just too many secrets going on. So next episode, maybe all the secrets are laid out on the table. Either way, I'm very interested to see where all this ends up taking us going forward. And also, it seems like, Deathstroke might be just our permanent bad guy going forward. Because I almost expected us to have like a team of villains or something like that. Not like some Legion of Doom situation, but just a team. I thought maybe recruit more people, but it's like, the only other person involved was Dr. Light, and he's dead. So we'll have to wait and see. And now moving on to this week's episode of Van Helsing. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we have Vanessa coming across a group of survivors. And in particular, she ends up hitting it off with this girl she meets named Jax. It's kind of interesting because Vanessa kind of comes in saving the day, got chainsaw in hand. It's like, don't take your eyes off of him. It's like, oh, I know how to kill vampires. And she stabs one in the head just as it was behind her. Because it's like, yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, you think you hot shit. It's like, yeah, Vanessa came in, swoop in, saved the day. Which Jax is immediately like, oh my God, you're so badass and everything. It's like, you should come back with us. It's like, she's like, nah, I gotta go on. Because it's actually interesting because for her, she's like, I'm not killing anymore and stuff like that. It's that interesting thing where it's like for her, she's trying to overcompensate because obviously she thinks the more killing she does, the more she's going to drive that darkness. It's like, no, but I owe it to, everyone. I owe it to Dylan. I owe it to Muhammad. I owe it to Lily. I owe it to Scarlet not to give into that darkness. Let any more darkness submerge me. I need to be free of it. So she's trying not to kill anymore. So, because she's kind of done, But it's like, hey, come back. We got karaoke. And she's like, all right. So she reluctantly goes. Now, what was interesting is she looks in the book and it says another Jacob is what she was referencing. So I'm guessing because we know he had one brother and that was Abraham, right? If I remember correctly. But does that mean he had another brother that was a twin, or was Abraham his twin brother? Whatever the case may be. Part of me wondered, because obviously they made such a note of that, made me think, because, I think maybe twins run in the Van Helsing family. Well, not always, because Vanessa's mom, Abby wasn't a twin, but it makes maybe somewhere in the line of the Van Helsings, every so often, it's in the genes to have twins. We'll kind of get to that in a little bit later on, but I am wondering about that. But what's interesting though too is like she put blood on the page and it ends up turning into a compass. And the center of it looked like it said VH, so it's like Van Helsing. Now the question is, immediately my brain started going, is that supposed to be literally a compass to other Van Helsings? Which it's kind of interesting because in the grand scheme of things, you would assume that they are the last of the Van Helsings. But that's what kind of, well, I'm gonna go ahead and start talking about it. But maybe that's what that whole thing is. Maybe there was another lineage of Van Helsings that have existed for so long that just no one knows. I mean, to be fair, Vanessa didn't know about her. Like, Scarlett grew up knowing, well, she didn't even really know fully her lineage. She knew certain things about, like, oh, she's destined to kill vampires and stuff like that. But Vanessa knew nothing about her lineage as a Van Helsing. It never came about because Abby ended up having to give them up at such a young age. So those are those circumstances. But, you know, so who's to say, like, eventually down the line, much later on down, some part of the Van Helsing bloodline that never got passed on. So there are people out there who might not know that they're actually Van Helsings, which is kind of interesting to think, like, oh, like, because at this point you'd assume literally the last Van Helsing is Vanessa, but maybe that's not the case, you know. So we'll kind of have to dive down that potentially. Well, like I said, I'll get to that later on, but I was actually surprised. Like, her running into Chad was so interesting. I didn't expect. I was like, oh, Chad. And that's actually, once again, I talked about this recently in the nerd mode. This show can be so damn bleak. It's like, oh yeah, Chad shows up. Oh, Chad's alone because literally all the other kids that were with him are dead. It's like, Jesus. First he loses Mike and now this. It's like, oh my God. That's super messed up. Because basically, you know, it was like one by one they were picked off too. And it's just like, oh, dude. And to the point, you know, he's like, oh, I got these traps set up for vampires, which Vanessa's immediately like, no, it's not. Those aren't traps for vampires because there's ammo in there to draw them into the trap. What would vampires have to do with, you know, but obviously Chad's reluctant to answer it. But Vanessa follows him and finds it because he's given up because he's like, yeah, there's nothing left for me. You know, no one can save me, essentially. He's just given up hope. And then we end up finding out that Tabby, the youngest girl from like last season, is still alive, but she's a vampire and he's been feeding her blood. Not only he's using his to kind of compensate for the fact is when he doesn't, the traps were meant for people. And he tries to say, he's like, no, once I trap people, give Tabby some of their blood, I let them go. It's like, Vanessa's like, we both know that's a lie. You know, she drains them because vampires need a lot of blood to survive. So, and if they don't get that, they'll die. Which Vanessa's trying to explain. Let me cure her. It's like, no, because I was like, right. You weren't around her long enough to know what she's... Because in their mind, because they haven't seen each other since season 2, they just think she's some badass, tough lady, but they don't know, like, oh, the rapid healing abilities, the borderline vampiric side that she has, and even the fact that she can cure, because she's a little bit of a folklore in certain regards. Obviously, in other cases, you know, it depends. You know, I guess if you move around a lot, you won't really hear those rumors because it depends on if you interact with a lot of people. But regardless, you know, she ends up getting Tabby to drink her blood and ends up getting cured. And Chad's like, wait, what was it? I forgot what it was. He was like, what are you? And I think she said, I forgot what she said. It wasn't healer or something. It was something else. Regardless, that was kind of interesting. But I was like, okay. And now you bring Tabby and Chad back to Jax and her group, which, like I said, Jax and Vanessa had hit it off. They kind of actually had many similarities because, you know, she was like was it like a school trip or something when the Rising happened, and she tried to find her family, but by the time she got there, they're gone, so she doesn't know if they're still alive or not, which is like very much like Vanessa when she was looking for Dylan at the beginning, which, you know, she could understand because Vanessa's like, yeah, I had a daughter, I had a sister, yeah, but now they're both gone. And for her, it's that thing of like, she doesn't believe everything in the world is random. She does believe that everything does happen for a reason. Even the terrible things, all the pain and sorrow that you go through, all that's supposed to be part of the path that you're on that maybe you just can't see. We're all on a path we just can't see, you know? And I think maybe for Vanessa, she's been on one path for so long because she has always been, and it's actually kind of interesting when you actually think about it, like, Vanessa talked about it in like last season, that the fact is when she cures people, it takes a little, or was that last episode? Might have been, last season, it was definitely last season because she was having a conversation with Scarlett about every time she, turns someone back, it takes a little of her. Like, she can't really 100% describe it. But that's the thing when you actually think about it. Like, Vanessa has changed very few people back to humans. And that, because she ends up killing most of them, because I think that's just what she's, like, there's that part of her that's just driven to just straight up kill. Like, at no point, like, very rarely would she just bite a vampire to turn them back or whatever, or get them to to drink her blood, So it's like, it's that complicated thing of, like, why hasn't she ever done that? Because I guess it's just because it's just easier for her to be a fighter than it is a quote-unquote savior, essentially, Which is so interesting because so many people kind of wanted to put her in that box of being like a savior, but she was kind of like, no, that's not who I am. I'm just some regular lady who just happens to have extraordinary abilities, So, but it seems like now they're kind of positioning her into position. I don't know why I phrased it like that. To be more on the savior route, because even stuff in the trailer, kind of shows you that. Because I remember what it was. She said to Chad, "I am the light." That's it. I somehow managed to kind of connect some dots in my brain to get back to that. But regardless, because the point I was about to make is she's trying not to be the darkness anymore. She is trying to be the light, to merge herself. But like I said, it might be a situation where she tries to overcompensate. There might be more issues because of that, I mean, Chad's a good guy and everything, but part of it goes, yeah, but he is a little bit disturbed. Maybe Tabby won't be able to handle the fact is of like, yeah, all those people you basically killed to feed me, not the easiest thing to live. Might be some complications later on, but we'll see for right now. I also thought it was kind of interesting because Vanessa gave Jack Scarlet Sword. I was like, ooh, that's interesting, which I'm kind of bummed because part of me is like, oh, because it would have been a reminder of your sister, but it's just a reminder of like you being a warrior, and it's like, no, I'm gonna find another path. And maybe this is the path she was always meant to be on, or maybe she's creating her own path. It's hard to say, but I just thought that was just kind of an interesting development in that regard. So there's that. Then on the other side of things, we have Violet and Julius training. He's pushing her and everything. Well, at first, it's just like they're kind of going toe to toe. It is kind of interesting to see how fast Julius is. I mean, he is a good fighter. I mean, he has basically been fighting since the 30s, so he's got a bit of an unfair advantage in that regard. But still, he's teaching Violet how to properly fight, even telling her the way you're fighting is just, they're teaching you how to fight a human. You need to be prepared to fight vampires because vampires are very different because they're relentless. They'll kind of go for the throat. All they want to do is drink your blood. They're driven by that instinct. And so he goes a little aggressive. I guess he kind of taps into Dark Julius in that moment because it seemed like he slipped back into that the way he was grabbing Violet by the throat, lifting her up. But it's like to show her don't underestimate vampires. They're dangerous. And during the fight, she ends up cutting Julius's throat. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, oh my God. Someone help. But it's Julius is don't ever turn your back unless you know the vampire is dead. Which is interesting because literally Vanessa taught Jax that exact point. Obviously, if you've seen the trailers, it's kind of oh, I wish I hadn't seen the trailers. This is one of the few seasons I actually saw the trailer. I don't think I'd ever seen the trailer for the previous seasons. I don't think I did. Maybe I did. I don't remember. Regardless, I kind of wish I didn't because it kind of spoils certain things. But in the grand scheme of things, it's still just kind of interesting, the parallels in that regard, like I said. Anyway, so there's that. But then Violet kind of sneaks off with Julius, which I love her being for such a big guy, you're such a wuss. And he's like, I'm not a wuss. Whatever that is. But they go to Lowtown, which is so interesting. I'm gonna skip right to it, but it's the whole vampires attacking him. It's I guess it's they can just sneak in. I mean, they are daywalkers now, so it's not like they're adherent to having to hide in the shadows during the day. So it's they can kind of pretty much move 24/7. So I guess it's easier to kind of slip through a lot of defenses. And I guess Lowtown doesn't have the defenses. Because I'm sure Lowtown is away from the fort. From Fort Collins, but still, it's just either way. Because it seems that, her top priority, Violet, is to leave. Because her dad kind of keeps her sheltered. It's almost like Fort Collins is more so, even though she says, I'm not a prisoner, I think borderlining she kind of is. That the fact of the matter is she's meant to stay there. But the question then becomes for what purpose? So she gets attacked by some vampires, which she easily handles herself. Even though she's being outnumbered, I love at one point she ends up slamming like the trash bin's like top and ends up like killing one of the vampires like that. But then one of them bites her, and it's like, oh shit! I was like, oh man, that was what, because I was expecting Julius to step in and he gets bit, but then it heals and everything. It's like, yeah, I'm immune to ever being turned into a vampire again. But she gets bit, and I'm like, oh, now this is interesting. The dude starts coughing up. I'm like, oh, this is real interesting. And it turns out she's a Van Helsing, because obviously Julius is looking at it and he sees the signs. Even the fact that she heals up, and it's like, okay, that's the crazy thing about it. I mean, to be fair, because you're unsure with Scarlet, because Scarlet had never been bitten by a vampire the entire time, so that's why she was never really sure what her whole thing was. Because at first it made it seem like when Vanessa bit her to get her blood, it kick-started that, but I think whatever was there, Vanessa, I think they're the catalyst that once the mutation hit them, because I don't know, because that's not a natural Van Helsing thing. That's something specific to Vanessa and eventually Scarlet, the whole healing thing. Like no other Van Helsing had that, just because Vanessa's DNA was messed with, but then she passed that mutation on to Scarlet. So it's like, but then how would Violet have that? Not unless that mutation exists in, well, no, because it's like, not unless, well, because that could be the thing. Because we know that it was that lady from season 2/3 who was pretending to be Abby. Like, she said it herself. She just wanted to see what would happen. So she mixed in a little bit of the Dark One's blood into Vanessa when she was young, making her more vampiric. So it's like, the fact that she has a rapid healing makes you think, so the same thing must have happened to Violet then, right? So that begs the question, did Hansen do that? Because you'd assume, or at least someone there, Black Tech did. Because that's the thing. I guess that's the whole point. Like, she's meant to be their replacement for Vanessa. Like, I guess they always wanted more. Like, maybe they needed someone to perfect it. Or maybe Hansen became very protective of, because maybe that's always the purpose that Violet was supposed to have, to be that. But they were like, rather, let's get Scarlet and let's get Vanessa. That way I don't have to bring my adopted daughter into it. Can we find out that's his adopted daughter? Because I was about to say, it kind of makes sense, because he would be a Van Helsing too. I mean, but to be fair, it could always be the situation of, well, it could have been on his mother's side, so on Scarlet's mom's side, not Scarlet, Violet's, which even that, I didn't even think about that. She's Violet, Scarlet, regardless, it was just kind of in the back of my mind. So it's just kind of interesting, and obviously Julius is trying to keep that hush-hush. He's not even telling Jax not Jax, I'm mixing up names here, I'm so sorry. Violet, not even telling her what's up, even telling the dude that got turned back human. He's like, you keep your damn mouth shut, you don't tell anyone about this. He goes to Doc, who Doc is trying to get all buddy-buddy with Avery, because it's like, yeah, Hansen's kind of a grade A douchebag, but hey, Avery's someone we can actually talk to. She can help us find out about, Jolene and Phil. It actually Doc ends up looking at the files and finds out, like, 9 of those prisoners are dead. We remember how that all went down last season. But there's at least 2 that got away, which, Doc is hoping, like, that Phil and Jolene were those 2. At the same time, I was almost, maybe I was reading too much into it. I almost thought Avery was kind of hitting on Doc. I thought that's where things were kind of going for a second. Like, I thought she was, like, there was something kind of like her. Was it, maybe, like I said, I think I was just reading too much into it, but I thought she was being a little flirtatious towards Doc, of just like, I don't know, I just halfway expected, like, I don't know. It's where my mind immediately went, but, like I said, I could have just easily been reading too much into it, but, so there's still so much about this. It was interesting too, because she ends up explaining this to Julius, which I completely forgot about, the whole he doesn't like needles thing. That's something they haven't really brought up since season 2, and until like she's like, all right, 1, 2, it sticks him. He's like, ow, ow. It's kind of interesting, because basically, obviously he heals fast, but his nervous system, I think she was saying, is basically still heightened. I guess that's supposed to be something, maybe as vampires, your nervous system gets naturally heightened or something like that. Or maybe it's something that happens in the body. Your nervous system will get heightened in certain regard. I don't know what that's supposed to necessarily mean. But what I thought was kind of interesting is she basically said the blood sample from Vanessa and what was in that vial, which we know is the Dark One's blood, ended up being almost identical, but then there's like some kind of mutation. So I guess like some mutation happened to the Dark One's DNA, and anyone that's got that Dark One's DNA mixed in with them immediately gets that mutation as well. Because we see that vial of blood is magical, so like it gets emptied out, automatically refills. So maybe its properties still main, like, you know, when they pass on to someone like Vanessa who passes it on to Scarlet, it manifests like that too. Because it's interesting, because no matter, I'm wondering why is it that specifically it manifested the way it did in Vanessa. And I guess because Vanessa's had it her entire life, because that's always why she's kind of had a little bit of like anger control issues, is because of that. But it's like Scarlet never dealt with that, even though like some of that passed on to her. So it's just kind of interesting when you think about it. So there's still like a lot we have to fill in. But it seems that Hansen knows about Violet, about what she is, who she is as a Van Helsing, and but he's trying to keep it hush hush, because I don't think it's just, I think because he doesn't want Doc to let anyone else know, because I'm assuming like no one else at Black Tech knew, because if they did, that'd be a whole thing. So it's kind of interesting, like, which is kind of interesting because Neil McDonough also kind of played a similar thing with Damien Dark in season 3 of DC's Legends of Tomorrow, to a certain extent, without going into spoilers if you're not familiar with DC's Legends of Tomorrow, so I won't really get into it. It's just kind of an interesting parallel between Hansen and Damien Dark in that regard, but nevertheless. So I'm guessing it's supposed to be kind of a top secret situation like that. So Doc ends up getting locked up, which she's panicking, which I'm assuming is just she kind of has this almost like claustrophobic reminder of being locked up back in season 1 in the hospital when she was a vampire. So it reminds her of kind of like a probably like a low point in her life because of the circumstances that led to her becoming a vampire, but also just being locked up for that long. Like it just probably takes her back to that. So that's probably why she's like, let me out of here, let me out of here. So there is that. There is so much to kind of pull away from this. I'm so interested to see where they end up taking us going forward with all of this next episode. I'm curious, is Julius going to tell Violet the truth about herself? I mean, because he knows Doc was looking for Julius, so he knows that Julius must know, but Julius still has to play a role, so he's probably still threatening him, probably like, if you don't play ball, something's not only going to happen to Phil and Jolene, but also Doc too, but they also need Doc, so they can't, I mean, that's why he locked her up, because he can't kill her, because he needs her for all that's coming, because that's what Doc is hoping for, to potentially find a cure for all this vampirism, kind of get rid of the virus once and for all. So, but regardless, I am very, very, very interested to see where this all ends up taking us going forward. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.